Well, hello. Welcome to ICRC-TV's COVID Business and HR Updates. My name is Pandy Pridemore, Principal Consultant and Founder of the Human Resource USA. Welcome back to another show. We have had so much fun with this show, and boy, have I got a lot of material for you today. We're shifting gears. We've done employment for the last three episodes, and today we're going to go back and revisit a couple of topics that we've been challenged with here in the past couple months. For the first time on the show, we have Dave Welsher. I'm just really thrilled that he could make time in his busy schedule to be with us. He's the manager of the EAP for St. Elizabeth's Hospital. And let's talk about a very highly respected facility. The work that they are doing down there is well known in this market. So for Dave to find time to come on the show and help us with this topic of stress and well-being with our employees is just a real treat. So we're excited about talking to him. Another topic that we're going to go back over, though, is workers' comp. Now, remember, I think it was last week, I kind of threw out a little bit of bait on each of you about those of you who had multiple locations and had to acquire workers' comp through insurance agents. Well, I brought you on an expert, Sean McGee, Vice President of Casualty, let me get this straight, Commercial Property and Casualty Advisor with USI, one of the largest and well-known insurance companies throughout the country. And Sean is also an attorney. So his insight on how workers' comp is working throughout the different states here in the country is well founded. And it's going to give us a lot of insight on just how this evolution of workers' comp and COVID is going in some areas. And I want you again to be very open-minded, because again, change is inevitable with this COVID stuff. So we're trying to keep you updated on the most recent and most active decisions that are being made, and Sean's going to help us with that from a workers' comp perspective. And then, of course, one of the show's favorites participants, Scott Warwick with Scott Warwick Employment Services. Scott's back because of his strong insight on stress and mental issues within the workplace. I'm really excited about listening to him and Dave talk back and forth about what employers need to be aware of. But then I'm going to challenge Scott a little bit at the end of the show. So stay with us, because Scott and I are going to brainstorm on some really good solutions, or some out-of-the-box solutions on what do we do with the employees who want to stay home because of the school issues. And you know it's going to happen, whether they're coming to you or not. They're thinking about it. It's all over. I mean, what are they going to do with their kids, and how are they going to, enter into this new way of life as school starts and maybe the kids aren't? And then we're going to go back and reiterate or revisit all the different lawsuits that are taking place right now because of COVID. These are topics that you guys need to be aware of and be on top of. So stay with us, because we're going to start with Dave Welsher over at St. E's and the Employer Assistance Program. Did I say that correct?
Employee Assistance Program, yeah.
Let's start by just explaining to our viewers, for those who may not have one, what is that?
An Employee Assistance Program is a prepaid benefit for all associates that gives them access to mental health counseling. It's usually a capitated number of sessions. Most of our contracts are 8 sessions, which may or may not sound like a lot, but believe it or not, most things that present to us are at least treatable to a manageable degree in the 8 sessions we have. But part of our other challenge is if something does present to us that requires longer term care or something more specialized than we can provide in our setting, our job is to be a gatekeeper and help them get connected with the provider in the community that is the best fit for their needs, their insurance, their location, whatever is important for them. But our EAP is it's a staff model, meaning we don't use any outside counselors. All of our therapists are our therapists. We're all St. E associates. We've all been here for a long time. We're all independently licensed. We've all been doing therapy for, I think, at least 10 years, most of us over 20. So we're seasoned clinicians. We're generalists and can treat most things effectively. We don't hold ourselves out as experts at any one particular thing, but kind of a jack of all trades. So we can assess and offer some clinical intervention for most things that walk through our door. So there are two different types of EAP, kind of three. One is a staff model, which is ours, meaning all of our therapists are our therapists. We see the same companies, the same clients. So we get more familiar with the culture, with the companies, with the nuances that exist within their organization or even department, if we work with that company for a while. Because in addition to St. Elizabeth, we service about 100 companies in Northern Kentucky, from steel plants to manufacturing organizations to municipalities, law firms, you name it, we probably have a contract with them. So we see firefighters, police, VPs, physicians, nurses, frontline labor folks, pretty much you name it, and it comes in our door, which we like. It has a nice variety for us as clinicians to treat so many different things in so many different ways. We do a lot of couples work. We do see some families. We see kids over 11. So we see a lot, which is once again good. We're happy to do it and glad that it's a beneficial service. The other type of EAP is called more of an affiliate national model. A lot of those come free with insurance, usually a 3-session telephonic model, most of them anyway, which can be helpful, but they obviously have their limitations. Statistics tend to show that those are accessed to a lesser degree than staff models. I think national averages last time I looked was anywhere from 3 to 5% utilization. I would say our average company utilization is usually around 8 to 10%. So 8 to 10% of our company's employees use us on an annual basis, which is a pretty good number, and quite honestly is a testament to becoming part of the fabric of the organization, where we're not some weird ancillary service that's out there and not talked about, not shared in staff meetings and through HR and through promotional items like monthly messages. We send out a monthly message with a leadership tip and a life tip that covers all different kinds of things. Obviously, lately it's been a little heavily focused on coping with change and COVID and all the things that go with that. But it usually covers any number of topics. Posters, we go on site and do trainings. We have, I'd say 75 to 90 trainings that are an hour in length, kind of canned and ready to roll to address some of your more liability-based issues like drug-free workplace, reasonable suspicion, sexual harassment, violence in the workplace, and then the more, I would say, softer topics like stress management, dealing with difficult people, customer service. We have a training on road rage because we have a company that has a lot of drivers. So you name it, we have a training for it. And if we don't, we'll develop one. So that's you look like you have a question.
I'm just standing back thinking, oh my gosh, I brought you on the show because I knew you had a lot to say, but I'm telling you right now, the clients that I have that have access to EAP are not using not even a fraction of what you're offering. Dave, you're one of the best kept secrets for an HR or for a business owner right now during COVID.
I'm biased, but I agree.
Wow.
We need you up here in Columbus because I'll tell you, we've got, it's crazy. I hide under my bed on 70. You got people shooting at each other on the expressway like the old West. Yeah. So I'd love to see you deal with that one. Yeah, that's great stuff. That's great.
And I'm not done, to be honest with you. I mean, those are kind of our bread and butters, but we also offer, as part of the contract, you have a certain number of trainings per year, depending on how many employees you have. But we have supervisor referrals, which are, most of our companies value that the most because what it does is help identify a troubled employee and get them to us. So in a way, we get challenges off of your desk as a manager or supervisor and get it to our desk. Because if you've ever been a supervisor or in HR, as most of you probably have, a very large percentage of your time and energy is spent dealing with the challenged employee. Not because there's anything necessarily wrong with them, but because they're going through a tough time. A common example is someone going through a divorce. Their productivity, their attendance, their ability to focus, all those things are compromised. But you certainly don't want to discipline that. And you sure as heck don't want to lose who has traditionally been a good employee because they're under functioning for a time. So you get them to us through this process. we don't share the details of what the client shares. We share compliance. So we give a little feedback to let the employer know with a release, by the way, just to clarify, we get a release of information to let them know that, yes, they're compliant. They're coming, they're following our guidance, they're participating in a meaningful way, they are compliant. Obviously, I can't give you statistics because it's impossible to know, but anecdotally, I would say we have saved all of our company dozens and dozens of employees who probably would have not made it, quite honestly, without a little support and a little help, because most people are, quite honestly, are a little stubborn. They're reluctant to acknowledge they need the help. And most supervisor referrals are not glad they walked through my door to start, but they're almost always glad they came. And I don't mean me, I mean us. When I say me, I mean, we have 3 other therapists on staff here, 2 full-time and 1 part-time, and we're all busy. Not in an overwhelmed, we can't handle it way, but we're all busy. We had a little dip with COVID because nobody left their house, but we are definitely back to full throttle.
The depression skyrocketed for you, didn't it?
Anxiety, depression. We're starting to see a little uptick in people presenting with chemical dependency questions, concerns. We have not seen, although I know it's out there, an increase in marital discord and domestic violence. We know that's going on. Quite honestly, we always see a lot of couples. We do a lot of couples work, which good for me. That's my favorite thing to do. So I'm happy about that. But so in addition to supervisor referrals, if you have someone, kind of an uptick on the supervisor referral is what we call a fitness for duty. Those occur when someone has presented to work impaired, tested positive, someone who's had a psychotic episode or something like that, that clearly there's some serious questions about their ability to do their job, and they're off work pending our release. So we will see them, assess them, coordinate medical care if needed, of course, work with them and make sure we get that employee back to a functional level before we send them back to work. Because to send them back too soon could cost them their position. Obviously, we don't save everybody. We're not quite at that level, but I would say the vast majority of folks end up doing better after this process. So it's invaluable to the company because, as you all know, turnover is exceedingly expensive, time-consuming, reduces resources, taxes the resources that are still working. So anytime you can avoid turnover, it's obviously a plus.
How do they, because again, I'm trying to think of, EAP is a part of some of the health plans that companies can, tie into, whether it's Humana or Anthem or some of those. But let's take a smaller company that may not be offering traditional health benefits. How do they get a hold of you?
They can contact any of us. We do have a salesperson, Sarah, so she's always available for those kind of things, where you can contact me directly, Dave Welsher at stelizabeth.com, or our phone number, 301-2570. I'm happy to help in any way we can. We don't do generally a fee for service kind of thing, the onesies and twosies, because quite honestly, we're trying to use our resources for our contracted companies. And as I said, we're busy. So it's just not something we can do and feel like we're still fairly treating our contracted companies. But I won't ever say that we'll never do that, but it's not our normal practice. And I'm sorry, I forgot what you were asking.
Well, I was wondering, do you have packages for small employees?
Oh, yes, thank you.
20, 30 employees.
Yes, thank you, Scott. We have lots of companies that are under 75. That's what we call our minimum contract. Yeah. We have companies that have 11 employees.
Yeah.
We have a special price that's for our minimum contract. So anyone that's 25 and under, and I assure you it is incredibly reasonable for what you are afforded with that contract. And then it's a per capita, anything above 75. So for every employee, it's a certain number, a certain price for all those employees. Right. The other really cool thing is this benefit extends to anyone living in that employee's home. They do not have to be a dependent family member. They do not have to be on the insurance. We have, thankfully, nothing to do with insurance. If they just call and they say their spouse, their mother, whatever, works at St. Elizabeth or one of our other companies, we will schedule them and they get their 8 sessions as well. So it's an incredibly robust benefit. And my opinion, our value has done nothing but increase as insurance have gone to these high deductible plans, because so many people are not going to go for couples counseling when the average couples therapist is going to charge anywhere from $100 to $200 a session, and you have a $3,000 deductible.
Yeah.
You may never reach that deductible because you can only be seen so many times in a year. So to at least have 8 to at least get to a stabilized place, learn some new coping mechanisms, learn some new strategies and some resiliency skills, all of that stuff can be invaluable. And it's saving on both the employee and the employer's insurance. So
I can say
there.
it's even more critical for small employers, isn't it? Because if I lose a person, I got 25 people, look at the percentage.
Absolutely.
And I'm getting 800 to 1,200. I mean, I'm loving this stuff because communication is a lost art. With Facebook and Google and everything, our communication skills are getting worse. Divorces are going through the roof. And it is amazing. I do a lot of training with social workers, and I'm a big fight or flight type of guy. You know, people tend to be passive aggressive, and they say, oh yeah, it's amazing. People come in at $100, $150 an hour to talk about things they should have been talking about at the kitchen table for the last 5 years.
Yeah. Happens every day.
Yeah.
And happens to basically normal people who are just having a tough time. And that's, I think, the kind of the misunderstanding of therapy is that people think they have to be, pardon the term here, they have to be crazy to go see a therapist. But I've used my EAP twice. It was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
People don't grasp the value and the powerfulness of sitting with someone you don't know and just kind of unloading on them and then not judge you. And everything me and our therapists think, feel, say, and do is only an attempt to be helpful for you, no strings attached. You don't get that anywhere else. Yeah. It is different than talking with your best friend or your mom or your pastor. Now, I'm not taking anything away from those resources. They're valuable, important, necessary support systems, but they can't say things to you that we can. There's kind of an old, I don't know if it's really a joke, but in the therapy world, that your friends and family are there to tell you your life is not your fault. Your therapist is there to tell you it is, and then what to do about it. It's not 100%.
A lot of enablers out there, isn't there?
Say that again?
A lot of enablers out there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And with the best of intentions, but that ultimately is what it ends up being.
Yeah, I love this because I always think of people like Roger Ailes, Bill Cosby. There's a trip for you. And I always think it's like, do you have any friends at all? Right. I mean, with all these people, you know, it's like, I'll tell you, if that was one of my friends or one of my sons, I would probably literally duct tape them to a chair, slap them around a little bit and say, what are you doing?
Well, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. We never want to hurt anyone's feelings.
But I'll tell you, getting somebody to tell you, this is something that you need to fix. And so now let's do some, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, or let's do something and fix it. And people are just so afraid of admitting they got a problem that they'd rather crash and burn.
Well, I think so many people, they don't want things to be their fault.
Yeah.
You know, but we, you know, at least in our modality of solution focus and cognitive behavioral approaches, it's not about fault. It's about who's responsible for attending to it now.
Right.
You know, your life was your parents' fault until you turned 18. Now it's yours. Everybody came out of the house screwed up in one way or another. I mean, you know, that's just, that's living on this planet, right?
Yeah.
It's your job now to learn how to get out of your own way. And that's where talking with someone you don't know, who has the experience and the objectivity to see things through a different lens and hear it with different ears, can give you the feedback and the tools, the training, the skills, the strategies to be more effective.
Particularly now with COVID.
Absolutely.
Oh,
one quick thing before I forget, I'm so sorry. I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but I did want to say one last important service line that we do provide that, in my opinion, is just invaluable, and that's critical incident stress debriefings. That may be more important to me and our group because we work with all of the municipalities in Northern Kentucky. So we see a lot of policemen and firefighters. So if they have for firefighters and police, it's a pediatric run. Those are always the hardest. We will show up on site 24 hours, or at least after a sleep cycle. We will meet with the team affected, help them process and debrief what happened, so we at least decrease the chances of that having lingering effects of PTSD or anything like that. We're available on call 24 hours a day for a crisis. If any of our companies have any employee in crisis, 24 hours a day, they call our number, If it's after hours, they get an answering service, but they immediately patch them through to one of our therapists in less than 5 minutes if there is a crisis. And that's if it's company-wide. We've responded on site at 3 o'clock in the morning because of an unfortunate industrial accident. We responded as a whole team. We had a really bad scene at one of our companies and met with everyone affected and did whatever we could to help them, and then transition them, if need be, into the office for ongoing therapy and hopefully to mediate whatever negative effects could have happened from the tragedy that unfortunately they had to participate in.
That's what I was thinking. I've already had a death at one of my clients with an employee, and she was ill on Thursday. She was gone on Sunday.
Yeah.
So that would be a wonderful time to bring in a group like yours to help them walk through that process. Scott and I both have had suicide attempts at our clients.
Yes.
Again, the undue burden that goes on the employees, thinking that they have to protect or they have to shield this person from any further damage to themselves.
Absolutely.
That's where you would step in and be able to help. So very quickly, let's go back over some signs that employers need to be looking for. And then Scott, let's just put some emphasis on, look, your supervisors need to be trained on how to approach these kind of conversations. This is not when if you get an EAP, it doesn't mean that your supervisor can go over and go, "You're on drugs, you're out of here."
Yeah.
Please don't do that. Please don't.
Oh, yeah. Very common, though. I mean, very common.
Yes.
Oh, yes. You can't make it stuff up.
Right. We do have specific trainings for all supervisors for that exact purpose, to teach them how to recognize. And what we really try to convey is we don't want to make them junior psychologists and have them assess people for what's going on. What we train them to recognize is things that aren't that person's normal. And it's not their job to figure out why they're not being their version of normal. It's their job to recognize it, document it, and then hopefully in a team way with HR or whoever, address it and then involve us in some way.
Because there are signals, aren't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're subtle, but sometimes they're kind of in your face. But to be honest with you, I think a lot of people are paralyzed by it because they don't know what to do.
I know when my cat or dog isn't feeling very good. I mean, this is a big, and it just, so we're not fuzzy feel good, this is the biggest part of your budget.
Yes.
Honest to God, you got a $15 an hour person, that's $30,000 a year, and you're going to be spending with health insurance another 20 grand. There's 50 grand. And then you start throwing in all the other benefits. I'll tell you, you get up to $60, $70, $80,000 per person in a big hurry, and that's a renewable cost.
Yes.
So I'll tell you, taking care of that person, not having to retrain and everything. I've never seen an EAP not pay for itself.
The research shows that. Scott, I think you're 100% correct. And thank you for advertising for me. But yes,
being a lawyer.
It's not that big of a Google to find return on investment with EAPs. I can't quote the numbers right now, but it's not that hard of a thing to find. And there's definitely a return on that investment, from turnover to training to, quite honestly, in a weird way, I see us like an insurance policy. And listen, I hope you never need it. Just like I hope I never need my insurance policy. But boy, is it nice to know it's there when I need it. You're talking about a suicidal employee or someone who's really struggling. We get those calls, unfortunately, more than we would like. Hey, I have this person, in my office and I'm not sure what to do. Here's what's going on. Yeah. And we'll pick up that ball and run with it, or at least guide them in as effective a way as possible. And it's not the most important part, but it sure is nice to know that your liability is going to be taken care of by getting it to a mental health professional to do what is a best practice kind of thing. Because, people with the best of intentions, who are intelligent people, have, for instance, sent someone to our business health clinic for a drug screen because they thought they were impaired on the job. Yep. Yeah. I don't say that with judgment. You know what I mean? People get caught up, and if you don't know what to do, there's a decent chance you're going to do something that makes it worse, not better. Yeah. And so consulting with someone to get clear direction is always your best bet. I'm sorry, go ahead, Patty.
If you're an employer in the Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky range, you need to pick up the phone, at least talk to the representatives, talk to Dave. He'll take your call, talk to them, and just find out more, because we can't possibly on the 20 minutes that we've got here on the show tell you everything that you can benefit from
Right.
with this program. And if you're outside of that of this particular market, please seek out what opportunities you have. Go to your employee benefits broker. You know, we keep telling you, you need to have him in your back pocket. Talk to them and find out what your plan offers. If it has an EAP clause in there, you need to be researching and looking into that, because as you just found out with us, that EAP may offer you services that you're already paying for.
Yes.
They're already there available to you, and you're not taking advantage of them. This is not the time during COVID to be ignoring those kind of opportunities. Dave, thank you. Thank you so very, very much. And thank you to St. E's for allowing you to kind of escape and share your wisdom with us today. Also check out their website. That's how I found Dave, was going through some websites. And,
what is the website again?
Pardon?
What is the website again?
If you just go to stelizabeth.com/EAP.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So, not that any that Dave just talked about would be considered a workers' comp claim, but I was talking to a client the other day who has locations in Florida, and she said, hey, by the way, I filed that claim, that incident of COVID, that positive COVID with our workers' comp broker, and I went, what? You did what? And she goes, oh yeah. She says, our broker who carries our workers' comp wants us to take any positive COVID cases in the workforce and file those through workers' comp. It's to mitigate any future claim from any, it's a residential property management type company. And she says, we want to make sure that none of those residents believe that they got COVID from many of our employees. So it's a proactive thing, you know, he's got it. And I went, oh, wait a minute, start over. Things are shifting in the air and we need to talk about this. So who do I go to but the biggest insurance company in the country, who is eating and sleeping and drinking this whole topic. So they send me their big guns, Sean McGee, Vice President of Commercial Property and Casualty, who's also an attorney, as I mentioned, who's going to kind of walk us through why each of the states are handling this topic differently. Because Sean, there is no one set rule, is there?
No, there really isn't. And, you know, workers' compensation is there to reimburse employees for injuries that occur within and in the scope of their employment. You know, if I were to trip and fall while I'm on the shop floor, that's very easy to see that occurred within the scope of my employment. The interesting issue that COVID has brought about is really the burden of proof and proving how that came about within the scope of your employment. You know, there are certain industries, frontline workers, those in the healthcare industry that, you know, there would be more propensity that it came about. But states have all taken different approaches as far as whether that employee the burden rests on the employee or the employer. So typically it's on the employee to prove that. In my example of tripping and falling, it's very easy for me to say, here, look at the video, I fell over and twisted my ankle. You know, with the incubation period and the way symptoms come about or don't, I think it would be very difficult for someone to say within this 14-day period, it definitely occurred at USI. You'd almost have to live at your place of employment for 14 days to be able to prove that. But, you know, some states have shifted that burden. California really did an about face and said just the opposite, that there was a rebuttable presumption on the employer that if you had any positive case, it was to have come about through the course of employment. So I have a customer in California that I had some early conversations with. It was a 60-day period that presumption ran, and it actually just stopped at the beginning of July, but there are some legislative bills out there right now to extend that out. Ultimately, I think as cases continue to grow, it's going to be harder to prove that you got it. You know, if it's running rampant all over the country, I think it's going to be more of a challenge for employees to say, I got it through the scope of my employment, but it has certainly created a new risk issue for a lot of our customers. But generally speaking, you know, in the majority of states that hold the burden is on the employee, I think it's a challenge for them to prove that that they contracted COVID-19 through the scope of their employment.
Is California the only state that's done that? I mean, put it this way, are there any states that are actually part of the United States that have done that? I mean, California is just its own little Mars.
Sure. Illinois took a similar approach, but it was more nuanced. So California's, again, in that 60-day window, applied to all employees, whatever industry. Illinois was more focused on frontline employees, although their definition of frontline was more expansive than I think some people might think of off the top of your head.
Okay.
And then a number of other states, Alaska, Kentucky, Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri, took some subtle changes similar to that, mainly as it related to those in the healthcare, your frontline employees. But I mean, at the end of the day, and this is what we tell customers, we were just talking about it, labor costs are typically one of your greatest expenses and within a subset of that are your workers' compensation costs. And there are a number of things to mitigate the severity of claims and the frequency of claims. And, implementing, like any change within an organization, you have to have employee buy-in for people to move forward and relate that to the ultimate mission and goal of the organization. But if, we frequently recommend to have manager type bonuses if you see a percentage decrease in claims over the course of a period. So, you're rated on your claim scores and your premium, you live with that premium for a 3-year period. And if you can do anything to decrease that cost, especially, as we're in the middle of a 100-year global pandemic, I think it's never been more important for our customers to have cash on hand. So we're trying to, instill safety in every shape and form that we can, to be sure.
What as you're talking to your clients, because again, you and I talked about this in a pre-show meeting. Again, Scott and I are constantly harping on viewers. You need to have, well, I just mentioned your employee benefits broker in your back pocket. Well, your general liability insurance broker, your professional liability, your property and casualty. I mean, these are very important aspects of doing business. And you really have to be aware of what each policy offers. And now we're telling individuals, yeah, each of the states might have something a little bit different to say about it as well. What kind of a meeting do you have with your clients so that there aren't those kind of gaps? Because I can tell you right now, not all my clients are talking to their brokers about what's actually going on at each one of these sites that might put them at risk.
Yeah, so I mean, one, I would say it's been very interesting to see the amount of coverage areas that have been impacted, insurance coverage areas that have been impacted by COVID. Certainly the other side of workers' compensation is your general liability as it relates to customers or vendors that are coming on. The C-suite risks that are associated with implementing serious safety protocols are really going to allow you to paint the most positive picture and mitigate your risk to have, whether it's a vendor or an employee say, hey, CEO Pandy is taking this very seriously. We have temperature checks when we come in. We have PPE readily available. We're doing all these things. But it's a challenge. I mean, I think for employees that can work from home and do their job effectively, I mean, we're still closed until at least, our offices are still closed until at least Labor Day. I think that's a good protocol. But, then I think you get into EEOC claims if you have all your shop employees come back, but all your white collar workers stay home. And if your shop employees are racial minorities, I think you'd be opening something up and saying, hey, you've now created this larger COVID risk issue for us by forcing us to come back onto site versus allowing, the C-suite to stay home and continue to work. So, I mean, the amount of coverage areas impacted by this pandemic have been impressively sad, I guess I would say. But from a coverage standpoint, my line about that is you don't buy insurance to make yourself feel better. You buy insurance to respond to claims. So whether that's work comp, your general liability, your cyber liability, whatever policy it is, I think you should work with your broker to understand the endorsements and the reductions in coverage that exist within there to make sure that your broker has negotiated the policy to be drafted most advantageously to you, right? because the carrier is going to want to try and limit coverage where they can and get as much premium as they can. And as customers, you obviously want the inverse of that. So you need to work with somebody in the middle to be able to push back to have that there for you.
But you supply a lot of resources and training and prevention types of things, right? That if I am with you, it's like, hey, you can. And the reason I'm asking is started working with Tom Wagner up here in Columbus.
Yeah.
Known him for 20 years, and then he's with you. And just to let you know, I'm real excited to see you on here today, because what he showed me about employee benefits and the way you guys can advise and track stuff blew my mind. I mean, right on my phone. I mean, I can get my stuff right. So that information for making decisions as to what to do is the difference between $0 and probably six figures.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I talk to prospects and customers, and Penny went on about our size, a lot of people might sit there and say, well, you know, why do I care about that? And I think, Scott, to your point, you know, it allows us to reinvest in ourselves, and for me to be able to pull up 20 team members that could work on a single customer to do collateral review or focus exclusively on cyber insurance, or just live and breathe workers' compensation, or be a national resource. If it was McGee Insurance Agency, I think we've put out 100 different COVID-related materials since February, and I like to think I'm a decently smart person, but I couldn't have done that by myself over the last 3 or 4 months. So, you know, certainly allowing us to have the resources to provide value to our customers. I mean, just a specific example, you know, if you're on a high deductible program within your work comp, so say I have a customer that's on a $250,000 deductible, allows them to save on the premium because they're eating that first $250. The carrier is going to want some collateral to be posted as a part of that. And we were able to have team members come back and negotiate that collateral dollar down from what the carrier wanted, which is significant savings that they're spending month to month with their bank to post that letter of credit. So, you know, those type of value adds within work comp or any other coverage area, I think, again, our goal is to make sure you have the most expansive coverage, and then we're not leaving pennies.
Andy, let you know, I've already referred these folks on to like 3 of my clients. I mean, information is power. And if I had your guys' information, I mean, I'll tell you, I'd clean out Vegas. It's that good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from a, you know, work comp, auto, and general liability, those are your 3 main casualty programs. I like to say we're program agnostic as far as how we design. You know, you could be guaranteed cost first dollar coverage, or you could design a captive, or get, you know, be a serious risk taker. I don't push any one of those on customers. It's where does the data lead us? Let's have an eyes wide open conversation with, you know, the C-suite's risk tolerance, and then make a decision about, you know, what you think the overall buy-in is going to be. And let's try and find the best financial impact as it relates to that. So.
Well, and right now under COVID, let's talk about some of the really most fundamental things, even in this topic. And one of them is training. So, you know, Scott, you have emphasized for months the training of OSHA and their guidelines.
Yes.
And let's also just kind of warn our viewers, remember, OSHA does not allow financial rewards for not reporting accidents or injuries. So
right.
you gotta watch that little caveat in there. But at the same time, if you are practicing and teaching all the standards under COVID, you'll be less likely to have these workers' comp claims, whether it's COVID related or accusing or assuming that it's COVID. Let me ask this too, because I went on your website, Sean, and I agree with Scott. You guys haven't left any rocks unturned, but I didn't see anything in regards to training on COVID topics for workers' comp. Do you have any of that in the future, or any conversation about that?
Yeah, I mean, we put out a number of materials specific to that, and also as a value add to all our customers, we offer it's an online portal called a Risk Management Center that continually updates timely. So, you know, I tell a story. It's you know, when you had the substitute teacher roll in the old TV and the video that's 20 years old, it's not that where people are going to fall asleep in the cafeteria because it's the same video they've seen year over year. You know, it's being timely updated with workplace violence, COVID related materials. So that's been the customer feedback on that has been tremendous because it's timely. It allows you to send it to individual employees. They can fill out the training on their phone. It's very easy. They have to fill out questions as the video goes on. So, they're not asleep at the wheel as the training video is being played. We've sent out a number of materials as it relates to changing your program with work comp. If your work comp spend is a product of your payroll, and if you've either had to furlough employees or let some go, we were recommending to some customers to go ahead and make those changes to their work comp spend now, and then they could start accruing for that, even if they weren't able to get a check. That would normally be picked up at audit at the renewal time, but you could start accruing for that. And again, goes back to the theory, as we're in the middle of a pandemic here, we want to make sure that we're doing everything to make our customers as financially sound to ride out this wave. So
that's absolutely fantastic. If you are not talking with your general liability, professional liability broker, or your workers' comp broker, you need to do that this week. You need to pick up the phone. You talk to your employee benefits provider and ask them about the EEP program, and then you're going to pick up that phone again and you're going to call your general and professional liability. And even if you're still here in the Ohio market, make sure that you are aware, because there's a lot of TPAs. There are several TPAs here in the market that handle workers' comp. And with us being so close to Indiana and Kentucky, you need to be aware of how those employees fall within workers' comp, and make sure that you've got this all clear in your mind. Sean, how do they get a hold of you if they want to ask or take this conversation further?
You could certainly call my cell phone, which is 859-802-1250, or my email, which is Sean, SEAN, McGee, @usi.com, or my LinkedIn page, or call our main office. Somebody would direct you back to me, hopefully.
Yeah, LinkedIn, that's easy.
We're going to go back to training. And if you need guidance on, well, Sean, this is what we've trained so far, what are we missing? Guys, I'm telling you what little time. Scott and I are not trying to put more work on you. We are trying to save you money and save you frustration.
Save you
time is money.
Save.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Time is money. Sean, thank you. Thank you so very, very much for being here from USI. And again, viewers, if you have any questions, please feel free. He just gave you his cell phone. He is married though. I see the tiny tykes in the back. So
Yeah.
Oh, Scott.
Lots to talk about.
The PPP loan has been extended. People have till August 8th.
Yeah.
If you've not gotten your PPP loan money, I still know companies that are saying, I don't need it. Everything's doing fine. And quite frankly, that's today. What about
Today?
Next month?
This is going to be with us through the end of this year.
I have heard so many companies that say they're not even going to try to put people back into the office till after the first of the year. This is definitely not going away. December 31st is the formal date for the end of the pandemic, but who knows what's going to happen. That extension could be just right around the corner. I also want to remind everybody that the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL, is still available. So if you've already done the PPP, do you remember, can they overlap that? I don't think they can overlap it. I think it's one of these.
I don't believe so. But you've had folks on here that have talked about that. And that's where I've learned most of honestly, they told me when I went to law school, there would be no math.
Yeah.
Okay. So, somebody grabs your butt, I'm your guy. Okay. But no, that's why you need resources. I'm a sole practitioner, and I've got a whole bevy of people that I reach out to that are good at what they do. And that's what you need these days, or you are licking the outlet. It's going to get you. It's bad.
Yeah, well, let's just keep going on that train of thought. Let's remind everybody too that the CDC here just a few weeks ago changed their guidelines on isolation and quarantine based on a symptomatic strategy base. So please understand, if you haven't looked at those guidelines, please look at those, because the individuals who are not showing symptoms,
Yeah.
you go from 14 to 10 days on a quarantine. And the scenario that I'm seeing most that apply that would be the individual whose spouse is testing or has tested positive, and yet the employee is not showing signs, or they feel that they've been exposed. I actually had that. I was exposed, not for a long period of time, but the individual called me and said, hey, I've tested positive. It had been 5 days since I'd seen that individual.
Yeah.
I just tucked and hid for 5 more days.
It's
No
changing.
symptoms, no nothing. Yeah.
That's why they call it a novel virus. It's changing. So you take your best shot, but boy, you stay informed, and I mean, honestly, I don't know of anyone personally who's taken the advice that you've given on this show and what you need to do to prevent it, who's gotten sick.
Yeah.
But I had a friend of mine who is not the brightest thing in the world, and he got a really great flight down to Florida for vacation. Didn't go well. All right. So imagine that. So, and honestly, look at the Miami Marlins. One of them died. I mean, 17 professional baseball players. And it's why, because you got COVID dripping from every corner of the city.
And there's somebody in really good health who was not in the age bracket that we're assuming, correct?
Professional athlete.
Yeah.
And
Let's go right from that point. Guys, I heard this past week, I was giving a presentation to a group, and the attorney that was in with me mentioned that his clients actually had an employee show up for work, had tested positive, didn't tell anyone, was in the conference room. Now, they were all socially distanced. However, the conference room was full of all the C-suite. There was the owner, there was the CFO, there was the operations person, all the people who actually run the company. He exposed all of them. And when they finally nailed him on it, he looked at him and said, well, I didn't know I was supposed to tell anybody. I mean, I don't want to lose the work. I need to stay at work. I wore my mask. If you have not implemented a self-reporting policy, Scott and I have told you over and over and over again, please implement that self-reporting policy and get your employees to volunteer that information so that they are held accountable. You absolutely, and again, Scott, go over what questions they're allowed to ask, because you've got to stay within those guidelines.
oh yeah, I mean, that's part of that training. And I'm seeing a lot of good resources out there. I've got one on my website. I know USI's got them. I'm quite sure we can get some good stuff from the EAPs. But the bottom line, and that's what gets me, this isn't really optional. Okay. Yeah. So my manufacturing clients and people in construction get this like, oh yeah, OSHA training. Sure. No problem. Watch the video. You're done. For some reason, we seem to think in banking and some of these other areas that training, OSHA doesn't apply to me. Yes, it does. It's health and safety. And you've got to educate people as to how you get it, which means washing your hands with soap and water for 25, 30 seconds. Absolutely. And I found some great scans I put in my video that shows the ultraviolet light. A woman washed her hands for 6 seconds, hardly did anything. She washed them with soap for 30 seconds. I mean, it's night and day. Yeah. I mean, and understand, the reason it's a pandemic is because the human animal is a filthy, disgusting beast. It truly is. Okay. We shed our skin. Yeah, we shed our skin. We cough on each other. I'll tell you the things that we know. Absolutely. You've got to train your people in wearing their mask. You've got to train them to use the hand sanitizer throughout the day. If I ever touch a surface, I touch my face, I could have just contaminated myself. How to put on a mask, take off a mask. And you'd think that'd be common sense, but it isn't. Just go to Kroger or Giant Eagle and watch people leave and take off their mask. They grab it by the front. I mean, you might as well lick the handrail going in, because you've just put whatever's on your hand right against that mask. And a microscopic germ is going to float right through those threads, like you and I walking through the Holland Tunnel. So you take your best shot. And it's amazing. We're in the pandemic. We're making all of the same mistakes we made in the 1918 to 1920 pandemic. We're just repeating ourselves. And actually, we're trying to top what they did back then. So no, train. Because I'll tell you, I don't want to speak to other states, but I'll tell you right now, if somebody does call the Ohio Department of Health and turn you in, they will show up. Oh, I will tell you, I've already had it happen. Yeah. All of my clients, all of them, the Ohio Department of Health showed up because someone, like, oh, they're not doing this or they're not doing this. They came in and they looked at these clients and they're doing all the things we've been talking about. Ohio Department of Health says you're perfect. But I'll tell you, show up.
Let's go straight from there and make this a little short, because my last topic is really, I really want to get to it. But the lawsuits that have already been filed under this COVID program since just in June, 283 cases across the country just since June. And discrimination?
Yes, just like Sean was saying, some EEO claims, absolutely.
Yes, working from home and leave claims.
Yep, ADA types of things, FMLA types of things.
Retaliation.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you right there. In 1964, we got Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and it's all, the number one charge has always been race until we got to 2017. And because of the new Williams standard that we got back in 2006, number one claim every year is retaliation.
Yeah,
you've got a better chance of losing that one than everything else put together. And here's the thing, Pandy, and I showed you my toolkit. I worked like a dog to get this thing done, because people are trying to learn the families first. They're trying to learn what to do with COVID, the CARES Act. Well, that's all well and good. What I'm discovering is they don't know the ADA. They don't know Title VII. They don't know EEOC. They don't know Fair Labor Standards Act, FMLA, in the first place. And so, oh my gosh, I've got more clients that I'm talking to where somebody's trying to use their business sense. And they say, well, we just can't do this or we can't do that. No, you don't understand. You know how easy it is to get covered by the ADA? It's like falling and hitting the ground. That is it. And honestly, I think I'd almost fire somebody that wasn't disabled, anybody over the age of 40, because that means they're not trying. I mean, I'll tell you, you are playing with fire. And I'll tell you, I put on my website a whole new package, updated everything. It's like a 5-hour course in the ADA in 17 classes, FMLA, ADA. And I hurried up to get that thing done because I'm just watching employers drop like flies. And I will tell you, we are just on the cusp of it. That 200 and some lawsuits, oh, that's nothing compared to what's going to be coming from the EEOC.
Well, and again, the last two most popular reasons, Fair Labor Standards Act, which you have already mentioned, but then unsafe work environment. So guys, trust me, as Scott said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have not gotten our feet wet, and that's just the white paper that I got for this. I also want to, and you've heard me say this before, look, this show is for everyone. This show is meant for everyone. If you are a viewer and you've got an HR person who's sitting in that office who's, well, I've been HR for 10 years. I don't need to watch that show.
Well, there's nothing else you can learn, huh?
Scott and I have a job.
My brain hurts.
Of that. There's no possible way your HR person is going to be able to read and study and spend the time that we do to stay up on this.
I agree.
Please do yourself a favor, and whoever's doing your HR, get them into these kind of resources so that we can keep them apace, because you don't want to be one of these lawsuits. Walmart, Kroger, just here in the Indiana, Ohio market. Illinois, I think was Walmart. But okay, so moving on, because we're running out of time. Here's the big topic that's really hitting the fan, and I want to make sure that Scott and I really kind of walk this through. Guys, the biggest concern your employees may have right now is beyond money. It's what are we going to do with our children? Are we going to put them in school? Are we not going to put them in school? Can I find somebody that I can trust to do the daycare? And trust me, they're bringing these concerns to work with them. So Scott and I are going to go over some possible things that I want you to think about. And I want you to go back to your teams and talk about. Remember, communication is everything. The number one communication before I get started is you need to know the needs and the concerns of your employees.
Yeah.
You need to be looking them in the eye and asking them, how can I help you? What is going on as you're going through these. One of my clients the other day had their sales coordinator actually bring her kids into the workplace and actually thought that a 4-year-old was going to stay where she put him. Needless to say, in this office of cubicles, it didn't work so well.
Yeah.
The kids were hither to the on, and everyone loves the kids. That's not the point. They're great kids. They didn't destruct anything. They didn't mean to be a distraction, but you need to really think hard about how your employees are going to solve these problems. So here's some thoughts for you. If you, by some odd chance, want to allow a section of your company or a building, whatever space, to be used for daycare so that your employees can bring kids in, you need to be talking to your insurance brokers.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what the liability is there. Then you need to be talking with your management teams to decide, okay, what do we do if there is a distraction? What do we do if we've got an employee who has to go and check her kids every 30 minutes? What do we do if they all want to take lunch together and we've got food all over the place, or somebody breaks a chair, or somebody flips off, is running across the table and falls off? Look, they're kids. They're kids. I grew up in a family business. I understand. I truly understand. However, you need to be in control of your company. So be looking at that. Second of all, be very wary about putting together collaboratives and having some sort of control over somebody watching the children for your employees. I've heard that coming up of, well, I'm just going to hire somebody and we're just going to have them meet at one house every other day or whatever. Hey, there's a huge liability around that as well. So please slow down before you make those kind of decisions. I know you're trying to be compassionate if you're thinking in those terms, but there's a lot of risk. So Scott, let's talk about flexible schedules, because I came up with a few. Please add to them. Viewers, I want you to get away from a 40-hour week. Just clear your mind right now. This is a new world. It's a new thought. Everybody's conditioned towards 40 hours, but remember, benefit eligibility is maybe 32. So how can you work somebody's schedule where they work 32 hours versus 40? And maybe if they are really viable and impactful in the company, you adjust their wage a little bit so that they're not missing anything out of those last 8 hours. Think about that. Also think about the fact that you don't have just 5 days to work in. Let's look at how many of your companies can actually expand to 7 days.
Right.
Remember, overtime is not within a 5-day period. Overtime is after 40 hours in the work week. So if you can get somebody to say, okay, she needs Wednesday and Thursday off, but she can pick her hours up on, we're talking non-exempt here. We're only counting hours on non-exempt. She can pick her hours up on Saturday and Sunday. Why not?
Sure.
I had a construction guy look at me on this other presentation. He said, well, I've even thought about bringing them in after hours. We're non-union. Maybe he can work later in the evening. And my HVAC guys are thinking, well, maybe they work later in the afternoon when people are already home. If they're still working offsite, people would love that if somebody were coming to do repairs or check on things and they didn't have to take off the day. Somebody was coming in the evenings. Think about getting out of that box of 40 hours between Monday and Friday. I really think we're going to have to start looking at some new ways of doing things. And then what about opening the office outside of business hours?
Sure.
Do you have to have the office doors closed at 6 o'clock? Would there be a chance for one of your employees to come in and work in the evening, even though that isn't a traditional office time? Guys, we all have to start working together to start brainstorming some ideas. The important thing is keeping your employees on site, fulfilling not only what is good for you, but also good for them. Scott, did I miss anything? Can you think of anything else that?
No, your biggest point, I think, is very well taken, is thinking outside the box. And I think that's exactly what we're going to have to do now. And like it or not, we talked about this, the baby boomers are retiring or whatever. The Gen Yers and Gen Zers, they demand this. So if we're like old and thinking, well, no, it's got to be from this time to that, I'll tell you, this is exactly the automotive industry. And I remember the guru, Tom Peters, years ago complaining that General Motors and Chrysler and Ford, heaven forbid, the service departments would be open on Saturdays when the customers were around. Well, look at what happens today. So honestly, that's what you got to do. You got to evolve. And if not, you'll be a dinosaur.
This has been a great show. I know we could keep talking forever, as we always every week, but viewers, we're here for you. So your input is what we're looking for. Dave Welsher from St. Elizabeth's EAP, Sean McGee from USI and you, Scott. What would I do without you? Thank you so much to ICRC for giving us this hour. We hope to see you next week. My name is Pandy Fredmore. Take care.